So on this Gaudete Sunday, which is all about joy, it's certainly hard to preach on joy as we come to the end of this awful year. Plagued by a pandemic, violence, civic unrest, horrible divisions because of politics, and debates around health and safety have left 2020 to be thought of anything except joyful. Yet, when we look at the scriptures, we see something very different. Now, Isaiah, in our first reading, speaks of the joy he has because he knows the Lord is upon him. Isaiah is writing this toward the end of 80 years worth of suffering during the Babylonian exile. We've only had one bad year. This is after 80, and Isaiah is still able to feel the presence of the Lord. St. Paul, in our second reading, gives the secret to how we stay joyful even in the midst of suffering. By praying without ceasing, always giving thanks, retaining goodness, and rejecting what is evil. Now, this is exactly what Isaiah the prophet did during the exile, and St. Paul gives us the recipe for keeping joyful. Pray without ceasing. Every single day, my brothers and sisters, we need to approach our God, who is love, in prayer. Whether it's reading the scriptures or praying the rosary or some other devotional, listening to sacred music, or just sitting in silence and speaking directly to God and the Blessed Trinity. We need to pray daily. We can't really expect God to speak to us when we don't talk to him. And we certainly can't hear God answer our prayers if we don't know the sound of his voice. Friends, we need to pray daily. If you're not already doing it, start today. Pray every day. Always give thanks. We need to work on having that attitude of gratitude, to be thankful for everything that we have, and to recognize that everything we have is a gift from the Blessed Trinity. I don't care how much you've worked, how many hours you've put in, how much you've saved up, or the sacrifices you've made. You are not the reason for the things you have. All that we have is a gift from God. And the sooner we're able to humble ourselves and recognize that everything we have is a gift, the better off we will be at remaining joyful and holy and reliant on God and his grace. Because those who are not thankful are prideful, and nobody likes anyone who's full of pride, especially ourselves. Retaining goodness and rejecting what is evil. This is simple, yet also very difficult. It's not always easy to tell what is evil versus what is good. I mean, obviously we have, the big things, like don't kill anybody. We all know that's evil, right? But throughout our life, just throughout the day, we can find ourselves in a lot of moral gray areas, right? And they don't even always have to be moral issues. They just, sometimes it's hard to tell what should I be accepting into my life, what should I be rejecting. A good test of this is to just ask yourself, before you make a decision, is this going to lead me toward God or away from God? Is it going to help me build community, or is it going to make me isolate myself or lead down a path of isolation? Will this bring joy into my life, or will it temporarily satisfy a need? So when we look at joy, joy is heavenly. Therefore, it's eternal. What can make us happy does not necessarily bring us joy. Right? When I was a child, toys made me very happy. Now, as an adult, toys don't make me as happy as they once did. But when I was a child, when I spent time with my parents and with my friends and family, that brought me joy. Granted, I was still a brat, right? But, in general, being with family and friends brought me joy. Today, as an adult, being with my family and friends still brings me joy. Just because something or someone can fill a need and we experience happiness because of that, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, nor do we need to confuse that happiness for what is joyful. Believe it or not, our prayer life helps us to make those distinctions between what is joyful and comes from the Lord and brings me closer to the Lord and builds community versus those things that are evil and make me turn away from God, that lead me down a path of isolation and loneliness, that don't really bring joy into my life, but it is satisfying a need. When we go to the Lord daily in our prayer and we know what the voice of God sounds like, it's much easier to make those distinctions in the moment so that we can retain the good things that bring us closer to God and reject those bad things that are going to make us, or at least help us, turn away from Him and His love. So, friends, if we want to remain joyful even in the midst of a year like 2020, we need to pray always. We need to have an attitude of gratitude. We need to retain what is good in our lives that lead us to God and reject what is evil and makes us turn away from God. And we need to start practicing that today. This is not something to wait until January 1st or whatever day you want to wait for. Start now. Start today. Especially if you're not praying daily. Start today. Mass doesn't count. This is prayer. This is important prayer. This is life-giving prayer where we receive the bread of life. But this is our communal prayer as the body of Christ. You need to go home and have your own private, personal prayer life as well that helps you build on the prayer community we have here and in your homes and your family lives. You need to pray at home too. So go home today. Carve out some time. Sit with the Lord in prayer. I guarantee you it will be the best Christmas gift that you can give yourself, and it's free. All it will cost you is your time. But our faith is a free and awesome gift that is given to us by our God, who is love. Experience that love. Live as St. Paul is challenging us to live. And then we can be more and more like Jesus.